sidhani kama kuna msingine. Sidhani kama kuna msingine, so ni mimi na wewe tutashare bigidia.
Tungeenda bigidi. Je, mwenye atakuwa bado atakuwa na atanini ile kama itazimika.
Itazimika.
Ile
Msaidiana pia.
Nasema kuna mtu lazima akae karibu na hiyo 5D.
Wacha kama kata neno.
Namuona inafaa pewe maji ya kunywa.
Hello. 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 Thank you all for your patience and thank you for coming. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning once again. It's my pleasure to be the moderator this morning. My name is Tom Boyer, and on behalf of the Elections Observation Group, as well as the Kenya National Human Rights Commission, and the Technical Working Group on Elections, I wish to extend a very warm welcome, because it's a very cold morning. We really, really do appreciate you taking time off your busy schedule to come and be with us, to attend this National Dialogue Conference on the state of electoral preparedness. Of course, we have lined up the theme, demanding integrity, accountability, and transparency ahead of the 2022 general elections. And I'm reminded that we are just 8 months shy from that big day. So I hope that at the end of these 2 days, we would have had a fruitful engagement and that we will have something to take away from here. We are live across all platforms. Remember, the digital space is in position 1 in terms of hierarchy. So we are live on Facebook, we are live on YouTube, we are live on Twitter, and the hashtag is National Dialogue Conference. And I think we are also aligned to where the world is going in terms of technology. So you'll notice that because we are live on this platform, we also have our sign language docket that is currently live even as I speak. And we have Damien Evans. We also have Joki Shege and Patrick Muia, who is currently live, as you can see on the left side of this room. So, listen, 9 days before Christmas. So it's possible that, and I can see, we are still making our Xmas plans. So a bit of housekeeping. To my left, we have the guest rooms, and we have some ladies who are also helping us with ushering, the ushers. We have Jamila, we have Imelda, we have Sarah, and Beryl. So they all know the drill. In case you need anything, you can reach out to them. I know our phones are on silent because we are live, so the less the disruptions, the better for this event. Unfortunately, we don't have Wi-Fi in here, but I'm still talking with the technical team to see whether we can get a hotspot so that we move together. Now, I think in the interest of time, I would wish at this point to invite our first speaker to begin the program, and we are pleased to invite the Elections Observation Group Chairperson, Anne Ireri. I would wish to ask her to come here and give us the opening remarks. And as she comes here, let's give her a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. How are we, friends? Good morning. Yes, I know it's a cold morning, but we are alive, and as Tom has said, the festivities are not too far, so we have reason to smile. My name is Anne Ireri. I'm currently the chairperson of the Election Observers Group, and we are delighted and extremely pleased and honored that you have found time amidst your very busy schedules. We are aware that we are getting almost to the close down for a number of us, but that you still are available to engage in this most important topic and discourse for our country. So allow me to make a few welcome remarks. It is my singular honor to address you on this day in which state and non-state actors are gathered here at the historic Bomas of Kenya to dialogue as critical stakeholders and take stock on the state of preparedness ahead of next year's general election in our country. As has been said, we are less than 8 months away from the next general election. One of the greatest concerns for us as ILOG is how electoral integrity can be safeguarded and a peaceful, free and fair election secured through a concerted effort of all the stakeholders present here and those who are not here. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that elections are a celebration of a fundamental human rights principle that is enshrined in our Constitution of Kenya, and therefore it behooves us as a nation to work collectively to ensure that they are conducted in a free, fair and credible way. At the end of each electoral process, the focus is always on the integrity of the election administration, and this is essential in enhancing the acceptability and legitimacy of results declared by the electoral management bodies. Non-state actors too must appreciate their role in supporting electoral management bodies in delivering these credible, free and fair elections, and especially now that we are 8 months away from the 9th of August 2022. By doing the things we do, whether we are conducting civic education, voter education, capacity building, documenting and research, whether we are offering legal aid, advocacy and lobbying, or even convening forums such as this, we are collectively contributing towards the realization of credible elections. From our own analysis as FIDA, as ILOG, and observation of the electoral environment, it is apparent that a number of issues and critical electoral matters have to be addressed. And allow me to list this. One is that many of the desired electoral reforms impacting the integrity of next year's elections are yet to be implemented, while others are yet to have legislative direction. We are aware that as ILOG, we have presented what we feel are critical minimum reforms that must be legislated upon for us to speak of a credible and fair election next year. We are also having last-minute piecemeal changes to the electoral laws and the legal framework that characterize the electoral processes in Kenya. This is especially so. We know that the August House is more at the sunset of its tenure, and so we need to be very careful about the legislation, and we are observing keenly what is being conducted, because we know from history it is also a season where, if we are not vigilant, a lot of last-minute piecemeal changes are sneaked through legislation. We are also witnessing delays in procuring strategic election materials such as the KIMS kits and ballot papers occasioned by litigation. And in our midst, we'll be able to hear from our esteemed Commissioner of the IEBC just what the reality is, because collectively we must also support the processes that the IEBC is currently engaged in. We are also witnessing illegal political campaigns that have continued unabated, raising tensions and in places causing unnecessary violence within the society. We are alive that we are now well into the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, and especially with a new wave that comes up each and every season. We are now talking about the Omicron variant, and this will also bring on board new dynamics in terms of the management of the elections in August 2022. There's also dire need for hygiene and sanitization of political party processes in time for the primaries. And we speak from a background where we know that political parties are still the main vehicle where aspirants and candidates find their space, whether it's at Senate, gubernatorial, presidential seats, as well as at county assemblies and at the National Assembly. We are also looking at alarming low rates of registration, especially among young voters, and continuous voter education is therefore required to attend to this apathy. Friends, it is therefore imperative for the relevant electoral state and non-state actors to continuously undertake robust engagements in order to champion for timely and comprehensive electoral reforms. We gather here not only to appraise ourselves and the country on the level of preparedness towards next year's elections, but also to identify key areas and gaps that still exist and then craft a framework of how to develop substantive proposals and recommendations to address them and the role that each of us will play. So as ILOC, we reiterate that our clarion call has been, as a country, we must look at elections not as an event, but as a cycle that requires all of us to individually and collectively participate in the preparatory stages, in the actual election day and post-election management of this particular process. We therefore are excited to have everyone on board. We're extremely glad and humbled by the presence of each of you. And may I take also this opportunity to thank all the institutions who have collectively participated with ILOC to put forth this inaugural Election Preparedness Conference, and we look forward to a lot of deliberations, a lot of succinct action points that will inform our country, and collectively we can get into 2022 well aware of what work is ahead of us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Karibuni.
Let's give her another round of applause. Jua imeanza kutoka nje. So, thank you, Chair. How can electoral integrity be upheld, delays as a result of litigation? Are the campaigns happening within the legal framework of our Katiba? Is it an event or is it a cycle? Then, of course, there is the new variant in town. I don't know whether it's here yet, but Omicron. What does it mean for our political campaigns going forward? So some good talking points. Opondo, I'm sure you're taking notes of all that. So thank you once again, Chair, for setting the stage for us on what to expect as we move forward. I would now like, at this point, to invite Dr. Bernard Mogesa, the Chief Executive Officer of Kenya National Human Rights Commission. Daktari is joining us virtually. Daktari, thank you so much. And I'll hand over to you. Karibu sana.
Asante sana, Tom. Happy to see you once again, Tom, on air. The Honorable Justice Diana Mochache, Commissioner Bolu of IBC, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. The next 2 days are very momentous in our history, in that we are taking stock on how much we are prepared as a country to undertake the 2022 general election. Kenya National Commission on Human Rights remains dedicated to carry out its promotion and protection mandate as enshrined in the Constitution. And my assurance to the delegates and the country at large that the Commission is very much prepared to undertake election preparedness and monitoring. We have already put up our election strategy, which was launched the other day, and therefore this is testimony that we are very much prepared for this task ahead of us. Lest we forget, we need to reflect on 2017 and what lessons we learned. Let me just jog your mind a little bit to remind you that the Commission in 2017 monitored the election, produced 4 reports titled The Fallacious Vote, Mirage at Dusk, Still a Mirage at Dusk, and The Silhouettes of Brutality. And most significantly, the Commission remained concerned about the killings, the serious injuries that were meted on the citizens, the properties that were destroyed, the brutalities meted on the citizens, the misuse of state property, the misuse of children during the electoral process, incitement to violence, as well as the sexual gender-based violence. These parameters remain key for us as we prepare to monitor the elections. And therefore, as a commission, we will keep on tasking the duty bearers to ensure accountability on all those parameters that we have mentioned. The Commission keeps on calling on the duty bearers to adhere to the rule of law as we conduct the elections next year. Respect for human rights remain key, and of course, adequate preparedness for the elections. The Commission recognizes the preparation so far by IBC, and we are going to listen to them. And as a Commission, we are prepared to partner with IBC to ensure that 2022 general election remains a fruitful one in our country. We are moving now to election campaigns, party primaries, among others, and as institutions with mandate, we must be prepared to ensure that the country remains cohesive. How do we eliminate violence? That must be very clear. How do we ensure that political party primaries are conducted in an environment that respects the rule of law? How do we deal with ethnic bigotry? How do we deal with the ill-prepared electorate? How do we support the IABC to ensure that they deliver their mandate? And how do we protect the human rights defenders and the civil societies who raise the voice to ensure that election is conducted in an environment that respects human rights? And then how do we deal with media repression, which sometimes occurs during the electoral period? So these are the areas as a commission we are very much concerned to ensure that things run smoothly in 2022. What will be the key considerations for us as we think of monitoring this election? There are certain historical issues that we will really focus and see how they manifest themselves. The discussions around the Building Bridges initiative process and what bearing did have, for example, during the campaigns. The 2/3 gender rule advisory which was issued by the former Chief Justice still remains a very significant point for us. How do we support and enhance the capacity of IEBC with adequate resourcing? How do we ensure that there will be smooth transition of power considering that the incumbent president is not running. So, dear Kenyans, these are the areas and issues that we must reflect strategically. As I conclude, we would like to ensure that as a commission, we are prepared to undertake the party primary monitoring. We will undertake to monitor the election campaigns, which have somehow started in a way, and how do we prepare the citizens with the right messages to be able to vote and exercise their democratic principle of voting in a free atmosphere. At this point, allow me then to call upon all the key partners to provide the necessary support to IEBC, to provide the necessary support to constitutional commissions and independent offices, to support civil society organizations and the media, as well as the human rights defenders and civil society, so that they can be able to monitor the election and ensure that the country remains safe beyond 2022. I call upon the religious bodies, professional bodies, business associates, and all those other entities to play a crucial role in supporting the electoral process and ensuring human rights are protected during this electoral time. So as we have these 2 days conversation to demonstrate our preparedness, I wish all the delegates well in the conversations, and also the Kenyan citizens to ensure that they play their democratic role in ensuring that Kenya remains safe beyond 2022. So it is my pleasure once again to welcome you into this meeting for the deliberations for the next 2 days. Thank you very much and remain blessed.
Thank you, Dr. Let's give him a round of applause. GBV, we had political violence, they still remain parameters of concern to Kenya National Human Rights Commission. So let's also, because that connection with Dr. was as a result of the virtual teams, the technical team that is on the left side there. I also wish to acknowledge the virtual participants, those who are joining us online from the ILO regional observation platforms from all the 10 regions. Tuko na nyinyi, muko na sisi, tumewapenda vile mmetupenda. Daktari brought up those issues of how to support IEBC to ensure that they do their work very well. We are so privileged to have a representative from IEBC. He will be speaking to us a little later on. But first, I would wish at this point to invite Carol Gaita, the Executive Director, Zalendo, a Governance and Communications and Advocacy Specialist, to come and talk to us. Let's give her a round of applause as she makes her way to the podium. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom, and good morning, and all protocols observed, recognizing the presence of the commissioners present, Commissioner Victor, Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, representatives from IEBC. Really honored to be here today on behalf of Zalendo Trust and behalf also of the technical team to help us take a look back, a little bit back to June when we had the first conference, look at the commitments that we made during that meeting, and perhaps kick us off into thinking what progress that we have made in the intervening 6 months and what sort of focus areas that we need to be giving here today. So mine, I was basically asked to set the context and remind us of the commitments that we made during the first meeting. And that's exactly what I will do. So as you are aware, we had the first conference in June. It brought together close to 900 participants, both online and offline. We had very engaging discussions. We had representations from the high offices, including IEBC, political parties, commissions, independent offices. We also had representation from the media and the civil society organizations. And so you'll see from the commitments that it was quite a broad range of areas. And the first issue that we looked at was election preparedness. And there was concurrence that the elections must be held on 9th August without fail, and that there is clarity in the Constitution as to when the elections should be held. And the clarion call at the meeting was to make sure that was a call to action to IEBC to make sure that the necessary preparations were in order. The management and the administration was also a request to make sure that there is adherence to the constitutional timelines and to reject any attempts to postpone the elections. And we also called upon the duty bearers to make sure that the IEBC was adequately funded to carry out this mandate. The second area that we looked at was on the election management bodies. And in this area, we looked at the safeguarding of civic space, which, as you may be aware, especially this week when we've been looking at the subject, there's a decline on the civic space brought about by COVID. So one of the areas we looked at was the constitution of electoral management bodies, and we highlighted IEBC, the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, the Political Parties Dispute Tribunal, and other electoral management bodies, which are also underfunded. So that's also something that we highlighted. And we also spoke about the unrealistic timeframes for dispute resolution set by the PPDT. The call to action in this area, one was on the appointment of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, and two, adequate and timely funding for the electoral management bodies to enable them effectively deliver on their mandates. And finally, on that area, to remodel the tribunal rules to make them more applicable. The third area was on the issuance of national ID cards, especially to address the plight of youths in accessing national IDs, lack of which would hinder voter registration. And then there was a special mention on the need to ensure that young persons from the heavily Muslim regions were also registered. And the call here was to make sure that the Civil Registration Bureau moves with speed to facilitate the issuance and collection of IDs, and we'll be keen to hear whether this has been met or whether we have made progress. We spoke about the pending legal reforms. We highlighted quite a high number of laws that are still pending and which are still pending as we speak. We also talked about the campaign financing regulations, and which you may be aware that institutions such as ours, Transparency International, ELOG, CMD, and CRECO, did have this campaign calling for the enactment of the finalization of the Act and the passage of the regulations. This was not done, and so this work that still needs to be done. So we called Parliament to swiftly enact the pending electoral-related legislations necessary for a credible, peaceful, free, and inclusive elections. We also did see media, I think the media reports yesterday on IEBC raising an issue on this state of pending legislation. There was concern about the data privacy. You may recall that the conference happened at the back of, public outcry over the registration in political parties that lots of us could not identify with. So during the meeting, we called out the violation of citizen data rights. We spoke about the data breach in party member registration. And we called upon the political parties, the ORPP, IEBC, and the Office of the Data Commissioner to take urgent measures to uphold the data privacy of citizens participating in electoral processes, and to also enforce data integrity in member recruitment. I think there's been some progress in this, and I'm sure ORPP will be speaking about their portal that was launched recently, and the platform that allows you to, verify and authenticate your details in political parties. The sixth issue was on security. So the ELOG chair in her statement spoke about the elections being a process and not an event. And so there was a call to ensure that elections are not deemed credible in the face of intimidation and disappearances. Noted the pockets of violence in hotspot areas and attacks on polling centers and election officials, which were a grave concern. A reminder too that at this time also there were some by-elections that had taken place in the Western region, And the Kiambaa by-elections was happening the following month, but we had also seen the incidences that had happened in Ruiru. And so these comments were also made with that background in mind. And so we called upon the Inspector General of Police, IEBC, and all other relevant agencies to establish and make public an election security framework for the purposes of electoral accountability. And it would be interesting to hear what progress has been made, if any. Finally, on voter/civic education, voter registration, and voter apathy, I want to combine these three, because really the calls here were around ensuring sufficient funding, ensuring that the young people were encouraged to register as voters, and ensure that the youth and other marginalized groups were given the opportunity to register as voters, and to ensure that for the IEBC, it was adequately funded to conduct voter education, and also a call to civil society organizations to help in the voter education. You may have seen a poll that was released yesterday by TIFA that spoke about very low voter registration turnout, and most worryingly, that the age group 18 to 24 form the lowest block of political apathy. And this is an area that should concern us, and perhaps it's one of the areas that we should discuss about, that if our youngsters are not interested in voting, are not interested in registering, do not align or relate to the political discourse and the political parties, then there's call for concern. And then finally, and closely related to that, was the participation of the special interest groups. So we spoke about the increasing unemployment and sham elections, the violence, impact on vulnerable groups, the women, the elderly, the youth, the urban poor, the persons with disability. And we called upon stakeholders, be it political parties, civil society organizations, media, and the electoral management bodies, to ensure that the inclusion of special interest groups was factored in. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is the background of what we are going to be discussing here. And so as we get into the panel conversations, as we take stock of how far or beginning to think about interventions that we can take forward to ensure that should we meet here again in the next 6 months, then we have made some progress. I thank you.
Let's give her a round of applause again. Thank you for setting the context for us. 8 months to go before the general elections. We had there pending legislation, how much ground can be covered within those tight timelines. Now, it's my pleasure to invite the National Coordinator of ILOG, Mule Musau, to come to talk to us about the critical minimum reforms. As he comes here, please let's just appreciate him with a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. Good morning, everybody. And welcome to this very cold space, although Tom says it's warming up. But this is Nairobi weather. I hope everybody has had a good morning. We are happy that you've come to this convening for purposes of discussing and taking stock of where we are at as far as our preparations for the next elections are concerned. It is 8 months to the elections and counting, and we need to make sure that every step of the way we are informed, we are appraised of what is being taken by the critical stakeholders, by all the other actors, so that Kenyans stay informed, Kenyans get to know what we are doing, how prepared we are, what the issues are, and what can be done as far as some of the issues that we are speaking to are concerned. Caro has already started off with a context setting, and she did a very good job in talking about what we agreed the last time. That was in June. We purpose to continue having these conversations periodically until the elections, so that every step of the way we are then in the know of what action has been taken, and we are involving the duty bearers to be able to appraise Kenyans of issues that they are undertaking. In respect to some of the critical actions and reforms that are still out there, which is what I want to speak about, is that in terms of the electoral processes, we still, and Caroline has mentioned the question of campaign finance. We have a bill which is still in Parliament. The Constitution gives IEBC the mandate to regulate campaign money, or money that is used in campaigns. Money is a major problem in our elections. So while Parliament continues hesitating, and we are hoping that Parliament is going to be represented in this forum, we had invited them, debating whether they want to suspend those laws between now and the next elections or for the 2027. We still believe IEBC has the mandate to ensure that a framework is established. And part of that establishment is, can Parliament first even do its act? There are amendments which have been sent to them. Can they be able to look at them so that we have an act which is clean and which can be used and which can be referred to by the Commission in terms of whatever framework they can be able to come up with between now and the election. So that is still outstanding. We still don't have a very clear, robust legal framework in terms of how we want to handle the transmission of results. IBC also raised this issue in part of their evaluations. Remember when we had the petition process in 2017, that was one of the issues which came out, that it was not clear how or what kind of regulations were in place that would direct on how the process could be handled, how you can be able to get to the server, how you can be able to go to interrogate that process. So we still have gaps as far as that is concerned. We still don't have a law which clearly articulates the question of the results pathways. We know that the law has given direction in terms of transmission of electronic transmission of results, but is it very clear in terms of having an alternative process should there be a problem with transmission? The Commission has been on the mark talking about the need to have the polling station as the final polling center, a tallying center, so that whatever else is just basically is an academic process of tabulation of results, but we have all the results from all the polling stations as being final. So the question has been, how do we transmit that process, those results to the National Tallying Center? Do we have an alternative method? It needs to come out very clear. In terms of inclusion, of course, the first clear issue has remained the implementation of the 2/3 gender rule as far as elective positions are concerned. BBI had a proposal. That proposal is still frozen in that BBI process. We had the president the other day saying that it was just a deferred issue, so we don't know when that is coming. But we still want a very clear framework which can be able to guarantee that when come the elections on 9th of August, the parliament that is going to be set up from the proceeds of that election is parliament that has secured this particular principle. So parliament has to sit down. There's still work cut out for them as far as this is concerned. I think the first speaker talked about the CJ advisory opinion, which is still hanging on parliament. We know that the political parties have been directed to try and give us lists which are compliant to this. But like I've said in other forums, even if the political parties were to comply with the 2/3, that does not guarantee the country that come August the 9th and after the elections outcomes are announced, that we're going to have 2/3 representation in parliament. Because they can also conspire to get these women, the parties can conspire to ensure that women participate in areas where they don't have a lot of support. And therefore the women again fail in the elections. So we need to be very clear in terms of how we can be able to attain that. There is a question of a speedy consideration of the Special Interest Group Amendment Bill of 2020. IBC and the Commissioner will be talking to us about it. There is a policy they've been trying to develop on inclusion. We want to hear what that policy, what we have as far as that policy is concerned, to ensure that inclusion is mainstreamed in the process of the delivery of the elections. And then we also need a clear framework on the diaspora registration. We know IBC, the Commission has been out there mapping a number of countries in terms of registration of the diaspora. But we need a very clear framework in terms of because remember, one of the words which is used most of the time has been progressive realization of the diaspora vote in terms of registration. But we need clarity. What are we talking about in terms of what is IBC going to be, which countries are they targeting? Because everybody also wants to participate. The transparency of the process, the clarity of the process is something that we desire to be better, to be sure that we are reaching out to some of these marginalized communities in our election practice. In terms of electoral justice issues, where election dispute resolution is concerned, we have recommended the delinking of the Dispute Resolution Committee from the IBC. We have also recommended that IBC is also delinked from running party primaries because there's going to be a conflict of interest issues. We have also asked for the Political Party Dispute Tribunal to be devolved. And if you remember, some of these proposals, again, are still frozen in the bigger constitutional amendment bill, which was the BBI, and they have not been isolated for discussion in Parliament. If they are, then Parliament can be able to appraise us as far as that is concerned, but we need to be clear because that clarity gives the direction to IBC and other actors, the ORPP, in terms of the management of the political party primaries process. We know in this country that the political parties give us the first instance of the election. And if the political party elections is not good, is not hygienic, then chances of again having a bad election becomes a reality, or having the wrong people even in terms of the leaders becomes a reality. We have proposed the tightening of the law and also lowering the evidential threshold for electoral offenses. We are going to go into this phase again. The question of hate speech, fake news, violence, voter bribery. Very few people ever see their light of their day in court as far as these issues are concerned. And part of the problem has been the question of the evidential threshold. And this is part of the recommendations that observers and other experts have given over the years, that we need to relook at this for purposes of making sure that those who go against the standards which have been set in terms of laws and regulations, action is taken on them. We're going to go into an election. The last 3 elections that we've had in this country have gone into a petition. They've been disputed. One of the overriding issues, or one of the issues which have been emerging from those petitions, is the timelines which are allowed for the petition process. We have 14 days. Again, the BBI carried a proposal which I think had been canvassed in different spaces to have 30 days for the petition process. That is still not in place as we speak. So again, we're going to go to an election where we'll be having a very contracted time in which a dispute process will be undertaken, or will be allowed to undertake. In terms of voter education and registration, we have asked the IBC to step up education and the campaign to ensure that as much information goes out there. We have heard, Caroline has talked about voter apathy, which was evident from the last enhanced continuous voter registration process that IBC carried out. Elections are about the people. If the young people are not registering for elections, then there's some kind of disenfranchisement to the future of this country, or the populations of this country. So all efforts must be undertaken to ensure that there is information, a robust campaign to educate, especially the young people, targeting them to ensure that they register as voters. And then it emerged again from the last election that we had problems with the voter register. The KPMG audit identified a number of errors which were supposed to be cleaned before the elections. Once the elections were over, ELOG also conducted another voter audit And majority of the issues that we had been identified, such as errors, such as duplicate records, which have been identified by the KPMG, were still there or still apparent. A little cleaning had been done, but not completely. So we still propose that once the registration process is over, it is important to clean up that register, audit that register once more, so that it can be able to inspire confidence to the public. On administrative issues, we still have an issue which is unsettled in the IBC. We still have an acting CEO. The big fear from where we sit is that any last-minute changes to the leadership of the commission is going to affect preparedness. If you remember, in the last election, we had commissioners coming 6 months to the elections. That affected the preparations for those elections. If you go to start changing the CEO of IEBC at the very last minute, because this kind of decisions can be politically taken, then we may affect again. So we need clarity in terms of that. Are we going to have Mr. Marjan continuing through to the election, or is there going to be an opportunity for a disruption? And that will affect the preparations. So there's clarity which is needed administratively as far as that is concerned. The question of public scrutiny and transparency in the recruitment of the polling station officials, from the POs to the ROs, is another area which, again, from court decisions following the 2017 elections, in the petitions which followed, part of that was exposed, that there was a need for clear recruitment process for the returning officers, public scrutiny for those returning officers, and also the question of vetting of the temporary staff. I know it's may be a tall order to ask IBC to be able to do thorough vetting, of the temporary staff. But, elections is conducted in the villages. So whoever goes on to become an IBC clerk in the villages, and everybody knows this person belongs to WIPA or belongs to ODM or belongs to Jubilee, it will have the perception in that local level are going to be influenced by that. So it is important that we have a thorough vetting of even the temporary staff, because they influence the perceptions which are being created out there. Finally, some of the additional actions that we are asking that needs to be taken between now and the elections is the question of illegal campaigns. The chair of IBC has spoken to this. Everybody knows the definition of a campaign, a political campaign. What we've been having since 2018 are election campaigns. We need action taken so that, and you heard it from, I think, the chair of ELOG, when she was talking about some of the tensions which have been created across the country, violence witnessed in Kondele some time ago because of these early campaigns. They need to be stopped. All actors in charge, whether it's the police, whether it is ODPP, they need to take action on those who are having these illegal campaigns, and voter bribery, of course. Then there's a question of coming up with an extra legal means. Now that Parliament does not seem very excited about having a framework for regulation of campaign finance, can then IBC and other actors be able to come up with an extra legal framework to ensure that there is disclosure in terms of where are these politicians getting their money? That could be open disclosures, that could be code of ethics, that is subscribed to by the aspirants. We need to see at least a culture emerging in terms of ensuring that the money that comes to our election is clean money, is good money. We have also implored on all actors, all election actors, whether it is IEBC, the Office of Registrar of Political Parties, to employ open data principles of sharing election information, because we want data to be in such a format that it is usable to the public. Data that can be manipulated by the public in terms of understanding the messaging that comes from such information. Whether it's voter registration, whether it is registration of political parties, membership. I know some action is being taken, especially by the registrar of political parties, but we need such openness to instill public confidence in terms of all the issues which are being raised towards the election. And then we're also asking for the need to institute a people-centered approach to the conduct of electoral processes through robust interaction with the grassroots by all election management bodies. And when I say election management bodies, I just don't mean IBC. We have the ORPP, is an election management body. We have even the JCE. We have all those units which are working around elections, the PPDT. They need to be seen at the grassroots. We need to see linkages between themselves, listening to Mwananchi in all parts of the country, because when you work with the people, we can be able, therefore, to be able to build trust in the process. I thank you for listening to me. I hope some of the other issues will be able to be brought out when we start having our panel discussions. Thank you very much.
Let's give him another round of applause. Asante sana. Thank you very, very much, Mule Musau. National Coordinator, ELOG. Pertinent issues there. He raised what does a last-minute change at IBC mean for the electoral process. Of course, we'll be hearing from IBC shortly on the way forward, despite the contracted time that Mule spoke about. And speaking of time, I'm advised that it's now time for us to take a break. Okay, I'm advised that the tea is ready. Under the circumstances, baridi, tea is one of those ways of curing the cold. And in any case, I think also a break is good for the heart and the mind. So we can do 20 minutes. Then when we come back after the short break, we will come back with IBC speaking to the issues that the National Coordinator, ELOG, brought out and the previous speakers. I thank you. Let's break for 20 minutes and we'll be back shortly.
Tushangilie Kenya, taifa letu tukufu, Kenya tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda.
Twajivunia sana tukijiita wa Kenya, nchi yenye baraka, Kenya nchi yenye baraka.
Ninahofia sana kwa sababu nchi yetu inaelekea uchaguzi. Lakini ninahofia kwa kuwa tunachaguana tungali tukiwa kwa hema, na hiyo kura ndio ilifanya nikapitia hii maisha. Kwa hivyo mimi kura ndio siwezi rusha na sitarusha kamwe.
Come 2007, we thought the free and fair elections will work. But the result, this is the result.
Tena nikajiuliza, je, tena mimi nitachukua kula langu tena? Niende tena nichague kiongozi mwingine tena? Mfalme mwingine? Tena nikuwe tena kwa shida hili ama namna gani?
Tumenyeshewa hapa na mvua ya kila haina. Na ugonjwa na njaa imetuumisia hapa, hatuna kura ingine tutapiga tukijua ya kwanza ndio ilitulete hapa.
That I will say is the dark history of election observation in Kenya, in the sense that the civil society observation initiative then did not rise to the occasion to secure the integrity of the ballot.
The reason behind the violence that followed the results of 2007 can be traced back to our history right from the beginning, 1963 and onwards. We have been entrenching one-party system. We've moved from there, we've built up a multi-party system, but since we have entrenched tribalism in this country, multi-partyism has simply reflected various regional and tribal arrangements. So by the time we go to 2007, much as in 1992, 1997, we had seen clashes. This was a point at which now the bubble burst in this country. And we've seen and we saw that actually Kenyans turned against each other, Kenyans killed each other, property was destroyed. And you can say that this is a failure of institutions if you're looking at the institution of the presidency, if you're looking at the institutions of parliament, and you're looking at the judiciary, because indeed one of the reasons that was given as to why the losers did not want to resort to the court process is they had no faith in the judiciary.
This was not the first election in Kenya that ended up in violence. It is not the first election that was marred by a number of features well before the counting process that elicited so much public comment.
The Kenyan has been able to appreciate the pitfalls that go with violence during or after elections, before, during, and after elections. They have been able to see for themselves the extent to which violence destabilized not just the whole nation, but individuals in the nation called Kenya.
At least we are trying to reform the security sector. And as a commission, we have a very important committee called the Election Security Committee, which brings together the IEBC and the Kenya Police and the administration. And so we prepare our security needs according to the polling stations where we feel there's a need for security, and the Inspector General of Police then together with his commanders prepare a deployment plan, and they deploy officers according to that needs.
Election observation or elections is a very specialized area. So you need to engage with it for some time to build expertise. Even in terms of visibility, there's no way you can create visibility for an institution that is formed and then operates for 4 months and disperses. 5 years down the line, or in the case of a referendum where you, maybe 2 years down the line, then you form another outfit. Then you see there's a problem. First of all, they cannot get the visibility. Even the staff working in this institution that form the domestic, observation initiative cannot even gain the expertise to engage with these issues properly. So you could say it has been ineffective historically because of the manner in which you have been approaching it. And that's what we want to change through ELOG.
As the Election Observation Group, we have identified 7 thematic areas or 7 processes within the electoral process that we think are critical to be observed in the pre-election environment. And this include aspects like observing political and campaign financing, the implementation of the Political Parties Act, media monitoring, how the media is covering the election period, how various institutions and actors are participating within the electoral process, including the conduct of political parties and other actors during the campaign.
We are dealing with reporting issues around long-term observation, and we have our tools.
Before an observer is deployed to the polling station, a lot of rigorous work goes into preparing them, such that the aspect of quality control is undertaken from the time we recruit the observer. At the recruitment level, and of course being a non-partisan citizen observer group, we recruit observers that are in no way partisan or are in no way aligned to any of the political party.
We have people on the ground, what we are calling long-term observers, so that at least you keep track on development on the ground. If things are boil over, you know how to act.
Actually, as a long-term observer in Mombasa County, makes most experience here. People in Mombasa County, it's like they had fear in their heart that there won't be an election.
Stories za incidents bado hazijaanza kutokezea. So unaenda pale kwa meeting, una take ile kitu ambayo iko hapo inaendelea, ukikuja nyumbani ndio unakuja ku write down.
We have even a peace component where we have set up an advisory and intervention panel that can intervene if things boil over with the various protagonists. And fourthly, we are now employing technology. We employed parallel vote tabulation for the first time during the referendum, and we intend to do it during the election, so that we can comment on the process on real time from when the polling stations open, and eventually do a projection of the results, so that if there's tampering, then we can at least detect it and say these are not the true reflections of the vote as I was captured by our observer. So we put in place a number of mechanisms that will make a difference in our view compared to what happened or transpired in 2007.
PVT is a scientific methodology for observing elections. It goes by various other names depending on which jurisdiction it's being implemented. Some of them call it a quick count, others call it a swift count, others call it a rapid assessment of the electoral process. It's essentially a methodology that relies on the use of statistics, database, and of course the use of the human observer. In terms of the 2013 election observation preparedness, what ELOG has done is make provision for utilizing PVT as one of the methodologies for election day observation, that of course complementing the work of general observers.
PVT comes in handy to play that role of providing independent scrutiny but also independent safeguard to that process, but also independent verification of the outcome itself. And this is why PVT will be very, very essential. PVT is useful to citizens because it secures citizens' right to vote, but also enables security of a fair electoral process and outcome.
So that is the guarantee that we can get when we use PVT. And that is the significance why PVT in these forthcoming elections is something that we, as citizens of Kenya, must look to and rely on and ask for and insist on.
These elections are very important. They are a milestone in Kenya's democratic development. We've been trying to transit into a democracy for the past 20 years, and we have had false start. If we manage these elections properly and get a popularly elected president, then we'll say Kenya has transited into a democracy for the first time. For the first time since the introduction of multi-party democracy.
Kenyans have every reason to feel confident about this commission delivering the right kind of services through the National Police Service, and particularly under the command of the new Inspector General. A very vibrant personality, a well-experienced person, a person who also is very well grounded in the legal issues when it comes to the functioning of the police.
The Commission has prepared adequately for this election. We have employed all the staff that we need to employ for the Secretariat. We have requested the funding we require to conduct the election, although we didn't get all that we required. But at least we have been given sufficient resources to conduct both the general election and also the runoff, if there's going to be one. We have classified the stations. We have got about 33,000 polling stations. Some stations may have maybe 450 voters per stream. Others may have maybe up to 700, depending on the density of the area. And so we have already gazetted all the returning officers from the county elections to the constituency. And these are going to be the key guys who are going to work for the Commission and announce the winners of the elections in all the elections that we are going to hold. My message to all Kenyans is that as we go for the final leg of this election process, that they must maintain peace. I can assure them on behalf of the Commission that we are going to put our best foot forward and conduct a credible and a transparent election. They will be able to believe in the results that we are going to announce. All the will of the people of Kenya will be reflected in the results we are going to announce. We are going to make sure that the media have access to all our results transmission and they can transmit to Kenyans and even online. And so I want to assure them that the Electoral Commission will take its part and make sure elections are conducted very professionally and very efficiently.
We cannot accept to promote violence. So for me, absence of violence is the first sign of wanting peace. And so we must appreciate that where this has happened, then I'm challenging all Kenyans, those who have caused this spirit of hatred and killings of one another, to come out and ask for forgiveness.
Peace is very essential for our progress, and I urge all Kenyan citizens to really go for peace. And as I said earlier, peace is obtained when there is justice.
Treat peace the way we treat good health. Peace is precious. Let's not lose it once again.
Tushangilie Kenya, taifa letu tukufu. Kenya Kenya tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda, twajivunia sana tukijiita wa Kenya, nchi yenye baraka, Kenya nchi yenye baraka.
Ninahofia sana kwa sababu nchi yetu inaelekea uchaguzi. Lakini ninahofia kwa kuwa tunachaguana tungali tukiwa kwa hema, na hiyo kura ndio ilifanya nikapitia hii maisha. Kwa hivyo mimi kura ndio siwezi rusha na sitarusha kamwe.
Come 2007, we thought the free and fair elections will work. But the result, this is the result.
Tena nikajiuliza, je, tena mimi nitachukua kula langu tena niende tena nichague kiongozi mwingine tena, mfalme mwingine tena, nikuwe tena kwa shida hili ama namna gani?
Tumenyeshewa hapa na mvua ya kila haina na ugonjwa na njaa imetuumisia hapa. Hatuna kura ingine tutapiga tukijua ya kwanza ndio ilitulete hapa.
That I will say is the dark history of election observation in Kenya, in the sense that the civil society observation initiative then did not rise to the occasion to secure the integrity of the ballot.
The reason behind the violence that followed the results of 2007 can be traced back to our history right from the beginning, 1963 and onwards. We have been entrenching one-party system. We've moved from there, we've built up a multi-party system, but since we have entrenched
Thank you. Let's settle down. Those who are outside, please, let's come in so that we start in the next 2 minutes. Please, let's settle down so that we begin in the next 2 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. We should be starting in the next 1 minute. Thank you. friend here.
Welcome back. For those who are joining us online, we are at the Bomas of Kenya right here in the capital city of Nairobi, attending a two-day national conference on the state of electoral preparedness. We are very grateful to Election Observation Group, ELOG, the Kenya National Human Rights Commission, as well as the Technical Working Group for putting this together. Remember, media is an important stakeholder in all this. So at this point, I would wish to invite, before we hear from IBC, to invite my senior, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Media Council of Kenya, David Omoyo. As he walks in here, let us give him a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone here who is involved in better elections and a better Kenya. Good morning. I have very brief remarks to make, but first of all, cognizant of the fact that oftentimes the media is left to operate like a cheering squad while elections take place, but then immediately blamed when something goes wrong. And that's why in the recent years there have been a lot of conversations about getting the media closer and closer involved. So the Media Council of Kenya, as you know, is an independent institution set up by the Constitution 2010 and Article 34(5) to set media standards and enforce those standards, ensure that there is compliance. But we also have a dual mandate of ensuring that there is media development, plurality, and diversity. So we started our process a little early on the 28th September. The Media Council of Kenya led the media stakeholders, including the owners, editors, and several associations, to launch the election reporting guidelines for 2022. That was an updated version of the election reporting guidelines done earlier in 2017. A few highlights of the guidelines was about coverage of campaigns, capacity of the media to how to hold and moderate debates, how to hold call-ins, and what type of coverage to give to opinion polls. You all know that we're getting to a season of opinion polls where everybody wins according to the opinion poll, the polls that release their opinion. The reason why we did ours fairly early is, apart from then setting those standards, there is a requirement to build the capacity of media houses. We are moving into an election where more than 50% of the journalists who will be covering the election process have never covered any political transition in Kenya. There has been, number one, the natural attrition in the newsroom, but the COVID pandemic has seen most people leave the newsroom. So we are having many new young reporters, many talk show moderators, many news readers, and many interviewers who have never covered an election process before. And it is the duty of the Media Council and the stakeholders to ensure that the election guidelines are not just a checklist for people to understand, but build the capacity of the professionals in the media to understand what to cover. Two other challenges are an increase in number of vernacular radio stations and online platforms which are being used. And the attempt is to make sure that there is ethics and sobriety across those platforms. Online media, you've seen several media stations, including Switch TV last week, switching to entirely operate online, and the penetration of the internet being fairly high at above 90% in parts of the country means that then many people are able to access information. You all understand the power of WhatsApp groups, the power of Facebook, the power of blogs and all that, and how that then gets picked and brought across to media. So over the next few months, I'm hoping beginning January, the Media Council will roll out an intensive training and mentorship program targeting journalists, reporters, talk show hosts, and anybody who owns a media platform to make sure that then the media is never left on its own, and the challenges of especially vernacular media being left and being overused by politicians is avoided. We will watch and provide continuous feedback because we have a robust media monitoring system. We have had already a few instances in parts of the Coast Province, parts of Central, and parts of the Rift Valley where we felt there are already what we would call very initial instances of either incitement or the media hosts' lack of capacity to moderate. One of the challenges you have while we may have very professional journalists and media talk show hosts, it is finding that the politicians they host in debates overrun them. They tend to overrun some of the young journalists in radio stations and all that. And so there is a challenge about how to moderate that. Sometimes call-ins, when we have a session going on and everybody is sober in the studio, the caller coming in, while it's a requirement to delay, a caller makes a call and makes outrageous allegations, and they are immediately transmitted. Those are challenges that we are well seized and we're aware of, and we will hope that we will get enough collaboration to work and make sure the media plays its role. I have to appreciate that we already have a very close working relationship with IEBC and other actors in this process to make sure that the media, which has a duty to inform all Kenyans, does its role well. We are talking about 200 radio stations and more than 190 TV stations because of the digital outburst, to make sure that then the information is delivered in a way that protects the country. So most important is we shouldn't wait for the last minute. As we do, we start the process now, provide mechanisms for feedback, and that will be done through our media monitoring system to make sure that then we are monitoring media trends. And finally, it is stopping fake news and misinformation. Those who know issues of deep fakes is about entities presenting themselves like legitimate media houses and providing false information which then can mislead people. That is a matter we are working on. Of course, we have other laws that will be managed by IEBC and the CA, but the part of the Media Council is ensuring that then legitimate and licensed media houses and journalists are not agents of fake news and information, just to make sure that at least the contest is between legitimate players and the media does not seem to favor one or two people. A challenge we are facing, and we already have 2 complaints in our office coming the past 2 weeks, is about balance. You know, balance is a fairly difficult matter to handle, and one major political association has complained to the Media Council about lack of balanced coverage, but it is a matter that will be presented to the Complaints Commission to guide, because when it is misinformation, or when it's fake news, or when it is use of foul language, it's a matter you can deal with immediately. But when some side feels that they have not been fairly covered, when you have sometimes several presidential candidates or political parties, getting that balance is a tricky matter, but the Media Council is hoping that we'll be able to handle that, every contestant feels that the media has played its role in a balanced and accurate way. Thank you very much, and I wish that the deliberations get deeper into the matter and offer solutions to make sure that we have a better united country at the end of the day. Thank you.
Another round of applause to Chief Executive Officer, Media Council of Kenya, David Omwoyo. Now, I'd promised to let you, to usher in the IEBC Commissioner, Bolu Boya, to speak to the issues that were raised by the previous speakers as he gives his keynote address. Welcome. Karibu. A round of applause as he...
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be here in this very important conference. To start with, I sincerely thank ELOG for inviting the Commission to share status of preparation for August next year election during this conference. ELOG has been an important partner in this space of election management. It has been a trailblazer in maintaining national dialogue throughout election management cycle. It is good to dialogue and create a platform like this for any institution which want this country to have good election and have smooth transition. We must create platform like this, not to create negative publicity about commission or election process like some NGO did yesterday. It was very unfortunate. An NGO which did not even consult the commission for many, many years, just wake up and talk about their gut feeling. They call themselves Human Rights something Commission, the NGO, not the National Commission on Human Rights. There's another one which called themselves Kenya National Human Rights Commission or something like that. I was surprised to see their media coverage yesterday talking about having a gut feeling that 2022 will be worse than 2007 election. I don't know where they got that from. It's a kind of things that we discourage as a commission because it will not help anybody. Neither does it even help that body unless they have maybe agenda of creating voter apathy, because those are the things that create voter apathy. If you create a situation that there is fear that will be prevalent in the election cycle, then people might not want even to vote. So the ELOG, thank you very much for creating this platform. This being the Election Preparedness Conference, and IBC is the key duty bearer in this case, I will give you a comprehensive state of preparedness. So I might take about 10-15 minutes. So bear with me if I take a little bit of time, because I think it's important that we all understand where we are as a commission, because we are the one who are the key stakeholder in this, because at the end of it all, everything rotates around the commission. So it is important that Kenyans know where we are as a commission. So the commission is established under Article 88 of the Constitution, which gives us clear mandate to supervise election and referenda as it may. So the commission mandate arising from Article 88 of the Constitution includes registration of citizens as voters, regular revision of voters register, delimitation of constituencies and wards, regulation of process by which parties nominate candidates for election, settlement of election dispute, including dispute relating to or arising from nomination, but excluding election petition and dispute subsequent to declaration of result, registration of candidate for election, voter education, facilitation of observation, which ELOG is a key player in that space, monitoring and evaluation of election regulations, monitoring and evaluation of election, regulation of amount of money that may be spent by or on behalf of candidate or party in respect of election. You have seen recently sealing we gazetted or nullified by Parliament. So for this election, unless another law is passed immediately, which I doubt, then as far as 2022 election is concerned, there's nothing like monitoring or regulation of campaign financing. It's a free market for all. So Kenyans should expect a lot in terms of money playing a role in as they choose next leaders. So we only urge Kenyans not to look at the power of money, but to look at the character of the person you are choosing or you are electing. Look at the vision or the manifesto that this person is selling to you for long term. Don't look at the coins that you are receiving now, because you are essentially selling your future. As far as election preparation is concerned, the Commission's long-tested experience in election management during both general election and by-election has created a large body of technical knowledge and practical competence that informs its preparation for general election. IBC has tapped into this experience and is on course to preparation for an election in an elaborate and comprehensive way as far as 2022 general election is concerned. We are building on operational and jurisprudential lessons of the past based on our realization that free, fair, and fair election can only be delivered by an institution that possesses sufficient operational capabilities that are functional under the law, under the four corners of the law. Election preparation or preparedness can be demonstrated through the following milestones. Immediately after 2017 election, Commission commenced the preparation for general election 2022, as you earlier told by Chair of ELOG, and for which we concur. Election is not an event. Election is a cycle of activities that feed into each other. So preparation for 2022 general election started at the conclusion of 2017 post-election evaluation exercise that was marked with the launch of its report in February 2019. Conducting a post-election evaluation report is an integral component of an election cycle and the best practice for election management. The finding of the evaluation provided important insight into the conduct of 2017 general election and fresh presidential election, and particularly what worked, what did not work, and areas of improvement. Evaluation was conducted in participatory manner and involved key electoral stakeholders at every stage of electoral cycle. Lessons learned have been incorporated in Commission Strategic Plan 2020-2024 and the Election Operation Plan, commonly known as EOP, and General Election Preparation for 2022. Commission also looked inward and reviewed its own policies and procedures and operation manuals for internal operation. So drawing from the findings and recommendation of the post-election evaluation report on its system and operations, and has developed, reviewed various policies and standard operating procedures, manuals, to streamline processes. Specifically, the Commission has reviewed Commission's supply chain policies and procedures manual, human resource and administration procedures and policy manual, finance and account policies and procedures manual, internal audit policies and procedures manual, internal audit charter, audit and risk committee charter, risk management framework, risk management policy, compliance management framework, and gender and social inclusion policy. Subsequently, the Commission has developed the Strategic Plan 2020-2024 within the context of its constitutional mandate and Kenya's Vision 2030. This strategic plan was officially launched in June 15, 2021, right in this hall. It provides a roadmap for Commission to fulfill its mandate within the said 5 years, and specifically the 2022 general election. Noting that election process is grounded on participation, the Commission has closely aligned its priorities on credibility, inclusivity, voter experience, and voter experience. This is based on feedback from both internal and external stakeholders during post-election evaluation exercise. The Commission's Election Operation Plan is a major operational document for the Strategic Plan 2020-2024. The EOP, that is Election Operation Plan, is key navigation instrument to steer the planning and execution of the election activities in planning for 2022 general election. It provides implementation schedule, activities, and timeline. The Commission has continued to sensitize stakeholders and the public at large on election timelines contained in the EOP through press releases, stakeholder consultation forums. Where need be, the Commission shall vary the timeline in consultation with the stakeholders, but in strict compliance with the set electoral timeline. This document can be accessed on Commission's website, that is ibc.or.ke. One of the special occasions in this case is where political parties approach us on the fact that they require more timeline than what we provided in our EOP as far as party primaries are concerned. Given the importance of party primaries in the election process, we allowed them a timeline that can allow them to conduct credible party primaries, where we have given them the deadline, the closure date, but allowed them to run their primaries anytime from 19th of January next year, when we'll be publishing the election date. So those are the times, it's a kind of engagement we have with the stakeholders. Where need be, we can adjust our operational timeline. But of course, legal timelines are cast in stone. Now, as far as legal reform is concerned, the Commission played a real key role in legal reforms in appreciation of the fact that electoral legal framework should facilitate free, fair, transparent, and credible election. The Commission, in conjunction with the stakeholders, has therefore reviewed election laws and proposed amendments that have been discussed with Justice and Legal Affairs Committee of National Assembly. On 6th and 7th of December this year, that is just this month, Commission held a workshop with JLAC to finalize on the proposed amendment, which are now expected to be submitted to the Parliament. The Commission also shared the same proposal with political parties, members of political parties, and the Political Party Liaison Committee in a workshop held on 12th to 14th of December, that is last week. That tells, on 13th is a public holiday, but because we have no time, the Commission was still at work in this workshop. Additionally, the Commission finalized and forwarded to the Parliament a report entitled Report on Electoral Law Reform in Kenya, the IBC Experience. I think we also shared with other stakeholders, including ELOC. The report details a comprehensive analysis of electoral system similar to Kenya that gives an understanding of basic threshold that electoral system must meet. The report further details areas of review of our electoral legal framework, and recommends laws that should be amended or enacted to regulate conduct of forthcoming general election. Regulation of process by which political parties nominate their candidate. Pursuant to Article 884D of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 and Section 27 of the Elections Act, the Commission set 18th October 2021 as the deadline for submission of nomination rules by political parties. By the said date, 89 political parties had submitted their party nomination rules, which the Commission reviewed and informed political parties to revise the said party nomination rules for the purpose of compliance with the law. The Commission has conducted further review and has communicated and will communicate the report in due course. However, the concerned parties have been informed in writing, so each political party knows whether they have complied or not after resubmission. Conduct of by-elections. The Commission has successfully conducted for by-election whenever vacancies occurred to ensure all electoral areas have representation. During the post-2017 general election, the Commission have conducted 43 by-election, 27 for MCS, 13 for National Assembly, 3 for the Senate. The said by-election were occasioned by death, resignations, or election petition in a few cases. In addition, today, 16th of December, the Commission is conducting 2 more by-elections, one for Mahu Ward in Voi constituency in Taita Taveta County, and Kiagu Ward in Meru County, in Meru Central constituency, Meru County. The voting, as we speak, are ongoing. Dispute resolution mechanisms that the Commission put in place, as provided for under Article 8842 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, the Commission prioritizes effective dispute resolution through the Commission's Dispute Resolution Committee and the Code of Conduct Enforcement Committee. In 2017, the Commission enhanced penalties for persons found to have breached the code of conduct during the campaign period, and we shall not relent on enforcing code of conduct in during general election 2022. Specifically, those found culpable of harassing and intimidating women candidates will face severe penalties, including disqualification. That is a resolution Commission has taken, and will be very particular about people who are harassing our women when they participate in election competition. Commission also collaborate with other electoral dispute resolution actors such as Political Party Dispute Resolution, the Political Party Dispute Resolution Tribunal, and Court of Law. In terms of stakeholder engagement, the Commission collaborates with various stakeholders in delivery of its mandate. The stakeholders have varying interests and areas of focus around the electoral cycle. Commission engages key partners and stakeholders, including, but not limited to, government ministries, departments and agencies, public benefit organizations, electoral technical assistance providers, development partners, election observers, political parties, and media, among others. Some of the ongoing stakeholder engagement include, and this is something one of the speakers wanted me to talk about election security. There is a program known as Election Security Arrangement Program. This is a multi-sectoral arrangement that has been in place since 2013, and whose membership is largely drawn from players in security and administration of justice sector to address the issues of election security. This includes the judiciary, National Police Service, Office of Public Prosecution, Office of Registrar of Political Parties, Independent Policing Oversight Authority, National Cohesion and Integration Commission, National Steering Committee on Peace Building and Conflict Management. So ESAP intends to build capacity of polls and security officials to conduct election in a secure environment. Furthermore, it is geared toward efficient and proper enforcement of Election Offences Act. A high-level meeting was held between the Commission and Inspector General on 22nd of October this year to discuss implementation of ESAP. And during the meeting, the Commission's Vice Chairperson and Deputy Inspector General of Police were tasked to oversee the rollout of the ESAP program. Currently, a technical committee spearheaded jointly by the Commission and the Police Service is reviewing developing election security manual in readiness for cascaded training of both polls and security officials. This is largely guided by Section 105 of Elections Act. Other key stakeholders is Judicial Committee on Election. In collaboration, this collaboration provides for preparation of resolution of election dispute, including dialogue on legislative framework review on electoral dispute resolution, and the training of judges, magistrates, and other judicial officers on election process. They know the law very well, but we have to train them on election process. So under this committee, we collaborate on that. There is also an important stakeholder known as Political Parties Liaison Committee, PPLC. This is a platform for dialogue between the Commission and the ORPP as registered political parties on all issues and activities affecting political parties on election process. The Commission is in constant engagement to advise parties on issues of compliance, election timeline, and stakeholder feedback. The last of such engagement we had with them is over this long weekend. The Office of Registrar Political Parties is another important stakeholder. The Commission and the ORPP have established joint advisory committee to address emerging concerns in relation to political parties that have an impact on operation of IBC and ORPP for the purpose of election. Commission also works closely with the Directorate of Criminal Investigation. The DCI has seconded Is there an issue with the system? It's okay. Okay. The DCI has seconded investigators to the Commission under a program that seeks to enhance investigative and prosecution of breach of security and election malpractices during election period. So we have some DCI officers in our premises whom we assign responsibilities to investigate any breach as it relates to election management. The Office of Director Public Prosecution also work closely with Commission, and we have a draft MOU to establish collaborative framework that seek to establish and efficiently enforce the Election Offences Act. The basis of collaboration is to find synergy between the Commission staff and ODPP in managing cases, including election materials as exhibit and during hearing of election-related cases. The Commission for University Education and Kenya National Qualification Authority and the Commission have a collaborative arrangement aimed at ensuring that the academic certificate presented by candidate are authenticated to weed out cases of fake certificate, which are quite rampant. The Commission is in receipt of a report of Joint Technical Subcommittee of Commission for University Education and Kenya National Qualification Authority, guideline for recognizing and equating qualification for political aspirants during 2022 general election. This will be followed by signing of tripartite MOU by the Commission for University Education, Kenya National Qualification Authority, and Kenya National Qualification Authority for implementation of this framework. The media, as the CEO of Media Council said, media is one of the very, very important stakeholders in election management as far as transparency of our processes are concerned. We have, as a commission, met the media sector working group on 22nd of June 2021 to deliberate on ways of enhancing electoral reporting during the electioneering period. This was followed by a media convention in October 2021 and the media workshop to appraise the media practitioners on the election process. During the media workshop, a joint media task force of the Commission and Media Sector Working Group was established to maintain collaborative effort. It is our hope that in 2022, during general election, we will have a live reporting from each and every constituency tallying center, so that as returning officers declare results in the constituencies, Kenyans watch direct instead of waiting for bombers to give result. They should get it directly from the ground, so that in Nairobi, we just do just tabulation and declare result as per the law. Then there is another important stakeholder which we are engaging, that is Communication Authority of Kenya. The Commission is required to electronically transmit in a prescribed form tabulated result of election for presidential result from all polling stations to the constituency and the National Tally Center. During 2017 general election, 11,155 polling stations out of 40,883 did not have minimum standard 3G network coverage necessary for transmission of image. The result is in form of an image. So there was a problem in transmitting from 11,155 polling stations. To remedy this situation, the Commission held a meeting with Communication Authority on 22nd of February 2021 with the aim of addressing 3G network coverage in polling stations. The meeting, among others, established a joint technical committee to map out polling stations that will not be covered with 3G network during the election for the purpose of planning and informing the public. It is our hope that this time we'll have minimized the number of polling stations which are outside 3G network. Otherwise, the problem of failure to transmit from polling station is bound to reoccur. Because if our infrastructure does not support the requirement of law, then definitely there will be hitches. But we are hoping that Communication Authority is working around the clock to ensure all the 3G, all the polling stations, which this time will probably increase from 40,000 to close to 50,000, will be covered with 3G network for seamless transmission. The Commission has also held forums, stakeholder forums with various organizations representing women, youth, people with disabilities, minority groups to discuss inclusivity of marginalized in the electoral process. In addition, Interreligious Council of Kenya was also engaged to discuss election preparedness. To enhance inclusivity, the Commission has organized and held targeted special outreach and engagement for special interest groups such as youth, women, persons with disability, minorities, and marginalized. Commission applies modern communication and PR techniques in informing and engaging its stakeholders. The Commission will continue to disseminate its publications, timelines, plans, procedures through various mechanisms, including but not limited to meeting with relevant stakeholders, use of Commission website, public notice boards, mainstream and social media, and dedicated portal for presidential election result during the general election. Accreditation of election observers. The Commission has institutionalized scrutiny of its processes and procedures and its conduct through various mechanisms that are anchored in law. Facilitation of observation and monitoring of election is a core mandate that has been entrenched in Kenya's election. Both domestic and international observers are being accredited to undertake their short-term and long-term observation of election process. The media, political parties, candidate agents are important observers who are closely involved in the election process. Agents play a central role in polling, counting, and verification of results in polling stations and tallying centers. We urge political parties and candidates to ensure you have agents in polling stations so that you get first-hand information as a way of improving credibility and transparency of election process. Commission has developed an online application system that various observer missions, media, and political parties will use to apply for accreditation. The call for application for accreditation will be out soon. Continuous voter registration and register of voters is a key milestone that Commission is so focused on. Register of voters is the foundation of any free, fair, and transparent and credible election. It is the basis upon which the political right to vote and stand for elective office is realized. The Commission marked the start of 2022 general election cycle with launch of continuous voter registration at an event that was held in Makueni County on 15th of October 2018. From the date of the launch to 31st August this year, the Commission registered a total of 180,938 new voters through continuous voter registration, which mainly happened in our 290 constituency offices. The Commission later rolled out an enhanced continuous voter registration exercise in all 1,450 wards on 4th of October this year at a launch held in Nakuru County on 4th of October. By end of the exercise on 5th of November this year, a total of 1,519,294 eligible Kenyans have been registered as voters. The Commission is currently planning for a second and the last ECVR in January 2022. The actual date of this second ECVR will be communicated to general public in due course. As provided under Section 6 of Elections Act 2021, voters will be afforded an opportunity to inspect and verify their registration details in the register of voters at least 60 days before 2022 general election. This promotes transparency and accountability in election process. Right to register as a voter is progressively being realized for Kenyans living outside this country, that is Kenyans in diaspora. In 2017, the Commission registered eligible Kenyans in diaspora as voters that is in South Africa, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi. For 2022 general election, the Commission planned to include 6 more countries in the diaspora voter registration, namely United Kingdom, Canada, United States, South Sudan, which is now part of East Africa Community, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and Germany, to serve as the central point for Europe, except other than the UK. Use of biometric voter registration exercise has enabled generation of both hard copy and electronic register of voters, which has not only facilitated timely inspection and verification of registration details by voters, but also periodic audit of register by independent auditors and any independent auditors before any general election. The electoral technology in place facilitates not only easy removal of dead voters, but also ensures integrity of electoral process, as no dead voter can vote. Just to add, in 2017, KPMG audited our register of voters and gave us names of people who are supposed to be dead and to be removed from the register of voters. But out of curiosity, we decided to run the list of dead Kenyans in court against our candidates. And 17 of them happened to be running as candidates. So that tells you there's a problem in it's not a problem on the side of KPMG, but it's a problem on the side of registration of dead and birth. When people go register dead, they register with their own ID instead of ID of the dead person. So when the data from registrar of death goes to the auditor, they pick them as dead voters and run against the register, and they pull out as dead voters. But then, until that process is harmonized, blindly removing them without checking against the register of candidates then becomes a problem. So that is why some people who are in the dead voters list are still there, Wanamule. So they are currently serving as elected leaders, some of them. Procurement of strategic election materials. Commission with provision of general election budget in the current financial year has commenced procurement of general election materials, equipment, and services. Major ones being ballot papers, election technology, ballot boxes where the additional numbers are required, security seals for ballot boxes, logistic partner in terms of distribution of materials, media agency for publicity, among others. We have so far concluded 90% of the procurement process of the general election materials. All this, including the ballot paper and KIMS, where Commission has already concluded the process and signed contract. In fact, the technology company is already on the ground working. They are already establishing system. Procurement exercise is therefore on course and is expected to conclude in good time for the general election. Data center and cloud hosting is another very critical milestone that the Commission is focused on. The Commission has acquired and established two data centers, that is primary and secondary, and is in the process of identifying a data center cloud infrastructure in Kenya to provide business continuity and contingency mechanism. On early campaigns, Section 22 of Elections Act defines campaign period as period specified as such in the notice issued by the Commission in relation to general election. I don't think we have issued the notice yet, but you are all aware campaign is going on. Therefore, official campaign period for the purpose of 2022 general election is yet to be published. Additionally, it is to be appreciated that campaign only commences once one has been registered as a candidate by IBC to contest in election. That is something that will happen around May next year. So what happened between 2018 to now, our guess is as good as yours. By dint of the above definition, read together with Section 14 of Elections Act, which provide for initiation of general election, it follows that any ongoing campaign drive, including erection of campaign posters, is tantamount to breach of Elections Act, and as such, election offense punishable under Election Offences Act 2016. It is important to note that enforcement of Election Offences Act is under ODPP, not IBC. Other thing I want to mention briefly about is participation in Harambes. Section 26 of Elections Act provides that a person who directly or indirectly participates in any manner or in any public fundraising or Harambe within 8 months preceding a general election or during an election period in any other case shall be disqualified from contesting in election held during the year or election period. Subsection 1 shall not apply to fundraising for a person who is contesting an election under this act or to fundraise for political party. That is, if you are running as a candidate and you want to fundraise for your own campaign, or a political party raise fund for their own campaign, that law has not barred that. But it barred candidate from participating in Harambes because it may have an impact on credibility of election. So those are the wording of the law. Pursuant to the pursuant thereof, aspirant cannot participate in fundraising either by themselves or by proxies within 8 months to the election, within 8 months to the election, being on 9th of December, that is last week. The prohibition includes participation either by attendance or contribution. The import being to curb aspirants from influencing voters by donating on fund or monies to support their candidature. By exception, however, the provision under subsection 2, aspirant or participating political parties are allowed to hold Harambes fundraisers to raise campaign for their own money for their own campaign. This has no cutoff point. And this has no cutoff point. The Commission established the campaign financing regulation with the ceiling, but unfortunately that has been scrapped by Parliament, so it is not there anymore. In conclusion, the Commission is committed to exercise its primary role in planning and putting in place measures and mechanisms to ensure simple, accurate, verifiable, secure, accountable, impartial, efficient, credible, and transparent election. Commission is alive to the significant role played by stakeholders in the electoral process, and assures you that it shall continue to engage relevant stakeholders within confines of the law, and in particular Article 88 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Commission assures Kenya that it shall continue to engage stakeholders in execution of its mandate. The Commission appeals to stakeholders to extend their support to enable it to undertake successful general election on 9th of August next year. Now, before I conclude, let me clarify a few things raised by previous speakers. One, the concern about the acting CEO and other senior directors. Yes, we have acting CEO for last 4 years, and some positions out of natural attrition, especially at the director level, have fallen vacant, and there are people acting. But it is important to note that 2 times we tried to recruit CEO in the last 4 years. Both times, some busybodies went to court and somehow get their prayers answered, and they stopped us from recruiting. So that's why it has taken us this long to recruit the CEO. Now, in next 1 week, we will attempt again. We don't know whether they will go to court and stop us again for whatever reason. So, including the acting position by other senior positions at the directorate level, we will advertise all of them and recruit in shortest time possible, hoping that there will be no interference through court process. Another important thing I want to clarify is the issue of appointment of returning officers. I think it's important to note that returning officers are not temporary staff. Returning officers are commission's permanent and pensionable staff who during election are deployed as returning officers, one per constituency and one per county. During the period between two elections, there are constituency election coordinators running the constituency affairs, and other 47 are county election managers managing the affairs of the county office, including the constituencies that fall within that. So there is a confusion that people think we are recruiting returning officers every 5 years. We are not recruiting returning officers. They are permanent and pensionable staff. The temporary staff that we recruit, about 500,000 Kenyans, are the presiding officers and the clerks. Those are the numbers that will cumulatively reach about 500,000. In terms of vetting, we do our best, but you'll appreciate that vetting 500,000 people for a short-term engagement is an uphill task. However, as a way of improving transparency and getting input from the political parties, immediately they are recruited, we normally share the names with all political parties through Office of ORPP. So that each political player, if they have anything specific, verifiable accusation against one of the appointed temporary staff, they can raise it. But of course, we are cognizant the fact that being a political process, anybody can raise anything against the appointed short-term temporary official. So we have to subject it to a scrutiny to establish whether it is just a frivolous accusation or it is real. So those are the few things I wanted to mention. So thank you very much for listening to my lengthy speech. God bless you and God bless Kenya. Thank you very much.
Let's give Commissioner another round of applause. And thanks very much, Commissioner, for that comprehensive presentation. Of course, you raised certain pertinent issues there. We heard about the 17 people who rose from their graves to come and vote. And I'm sure the next session, panel session, we're going to speak to some of those issues that the IBC Commissioner, Mr. Bolu Boya, has raised. Well, now I would wish us to move into the next session. It's a panel session where we'll be focusing a lot more on the religious community and civil society organizations, and they're going to speak to us about the state of preparedness. So let me invite on stage the moderator of this particular session, Mr. Marcus Agengo, is a senior programs manager at ELOG. Please come forward and take your seat, my extreme left. Let me also invite Olo Janak, who is from the Kenya Correspondents Association. If you may just step forward and have a seat right here. I would also wish to invite Sheila Masinde, the Executive Director, Transparency International, to come forward and sit here. And of course, the SUPKEM representative, Mr. Latif Shaban. Tafadhali, kwa heshima, kuja tukae ili tuongee kuhusu haya maneno. Very important. Remember, we are just inside 8 months to the elections. So these are key issues that must be canvassed. Asante hapo. And can we have the microphones ready? Sheila is making her way here. And I'm also advised that Suba Churchill is also joining us. Suba, I think, former convener of the Civil Society Reference Group. Thank you, Suba Churchill, for making time to come and join us. Please step forward so that we can make this conversation as interactive as possible. So that 1 minute of the soundtrack as they get ready. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion. As already mentioned to us by Tom, we have panelists from the religious community, represented by Latif Shaban. We have a representative from the media sector, represented by Olo Janak, who is the chairperson of the Kenya Correspondents Association. We have civil society represented by both Suba Churchill as well as Sheila Masinde, who is the executive director for Transparency International. This session will focus primarily on some of the concerns that we have as a sector, the religious community as well as the civil society sector. What are some of the concerns that we foresee coming up as we move to the elections next year? What are some of the concerns we have from the religious community? We have as civil society organizations. What are some of the concerns, critical concerns that we have that we think must be addressed as we move into this election next year? So I'll start with Bana Latif.
Good morning, everybody, and good morning, fellow participants in the panel. First is to thank ELOG and the Secretariat for making this happen, and to thank the previous speakers, including our friends from the IEBC, Bonamolu. We really learned a lot from your presentation, and also from the previous speakers. Now, from the religious sector, we do have concerns that we believe we as Kenyans need to speak about. And the first and foremost is the environment that we as Kenyans are going to find ourselves in come 2022. It is a very unusual environment. I don't think it is what we have been through in the previous electoral cycles. We all know that 2022 will be a turning point, really, so to speak, in terms of where the history of this country will change. 57 years after independence, definitely something will have to change. We will have a lot of new voters who are new, who have absolutely nothing to do with our history of how independence was fought. What they would want to know is what is it that our next government is going to do to address their immediate needs. And their immediate needs, we know, are very, very critical, which is really self-employment, self-sustenance, which is employment for the young people, their welfare in terms of healthcare for themselves and their families, things like that. But in our opinion, as religious leaders, and we have spoken about this, the very low voter turnout, the very low voter registration that was reported by IBC was a shocker. It was really a shocker because out of a projected figure of 6 million, it was reported only, and I think Commissioner Boru repeated the same thing, about 1,519,000. That is a very bad figure to turn out. We as the religious community, we definitely will be engaging ourselves with the IEBC to see how we can partner so that when the new window opens up, we are seen to be participating as partners with the IEBC to increase those numbers to at least 3.5 million to 4 million to make a total of, say, 4 million voters as we move forward to now compiling the final voter register. I think this is important that we note. And also, I cannot fail to thank our government for providing the environment that we all need, which is peace, We know there are many challenges that are out there. We recently had floods, and before that we had a very biting drought. And we know that we have still facing the challenges of COVID-19, but we do realize that it was not easy putting together a budget for the IEBC, and it's good that we note that this is now being addressed and is the right way for us to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Bana Latif. And I think from Latif's submission and the concerns they are raising regarding the low voter turnout and the promise to partner with IEBC and other organizations to ensure that the next round of enhanced voter registration drive at least meets about 3.5 million new voters. Now, over to you, Churchill. You've been in the sector for quite a while. You've noticed some trends. Do you think that as we move into this election, the concerns that have continued to be repeated in 2007, there was concerns. In 2013, there were similar concerns. In 2017, there are concerns. And there has been this impression that we keep on, as civil society organizations, saying the same things over and over and over again. We keep on making same recommendations. We keep on speaking to the same bodies and asking for the same changes to happen, and very little is happening. Now, as someone who has been in this sector for a while, what do you think must be done, even as you submit your concerns for this period? But how do you think we could do things differently to ensure that some of those concerns are addressed and our processes are improved? Over to you, Churchill.
Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation, and also to share some thoughts on the concerns as we approach the next elections. First of all, I want to say that, yes, it is true I've been in this sector for a while, but I've also been involved in electoral processes as an observer with the African Union, an assignment that so far since 2008 taken me to 34 countries in the continent. And some of the experiences that I've gathered in those jurisdictions become very, very important. First of all, as an observer with the African Union, which is a constant election observation mission in all countries. You remember in 2007, as Kenya went to the dogs, the AU was not there because they were deliberately not invited. And they found themselves in a very awkward situation, being asked to intervene in a situation that they did not even monitor and observe. And from then onwards, the AU took a decision that whether invited or not, any government will throw them out of a country at the airport after they have arrived. And I remember Algeria tried to throw us out at some point, asking us who had invited us. But it is an intentional decision that the AU took, that because they realized that in countries where regimes want to succeed itself, they always manipulate situations in a way that they do not want to invite, critical observers and monitors. And so in 2007, I think the regime at the time wanted to succeed itself at whatever cost. So the AU was not invited. The reason I'm saying that is because all election monitoring and observation missions make certain observations and recommendations. And one thing that we have never done is, for example, to ask the IBC now, to what extent has it addressed the observations and recommendations that were made by the European Union, for instance? What did the Carter Center make of our 2017 elections? And to what extent have we learned and prepared to improve on some of those loopholes that were observed? And so IBC owes it to the general public and to Kenyans to tell the general public that it has indeed addressed some of the challenges that were observed and noted by those observers, because election monitoring and observation is meant to improve, you know, those gaps that are pointed out year in, year out whenever there are elections in a particular country. The second concern relates to what the representative of the religious leaders said, and is about the low voter turnout. I think that the IEBC has not done enough and should not be the one telling us the figures of those who turned up versus those that were expected. The reason being that it is not just enough to set up a desk, employ clerks, and expect would-be first-time voters to turn out without providing the voter and civic education required to enable them appreciate why it is important to turn up and vote, to enable them understand and take up their civic duty. Because for every right, there is a civic duty. Now, these are young people who have never voted. I read some of the stories they were saying in the papers that, you know, every time they vote, they don't see what the leaders do. They have never voted, so it's a lie. They should not lie to us that whenever they elect people, they do not see what those people do for them. They have never voted. These are minors who have just attained the universal suffrage. But we have let them down, even as we blame them for not turning up to vote, because a person who was 13 years in 2017 would be a voter in 2022. What have you done to educate that person who is 13? Because imbibing and internalizing civic duty is a process. So my greatest concern as we prepare for 2022 is how we treat elections as if they are events. This is a process. This is a process. So voter education must continue from when we conclude one election and as we prepare for the next. Because you do not know who will be a voter in the next election. So it must start with the 13-year-olds. I've seen IBC done a commendable job helping pupils and learners elect their prefects. Now, those people who are in standard 8, 7, who are 13-year-olds, would be voters in the national elections in the next. So do we accompany those presiding, when we preside over those elections of prefects and head boys and head girls, do we also educate them on why it is important, to register at the national level as voters when the right time comes? So I think that we as a country have always treated elections as events. Yes, there is need to be intentional, a bit more intensified in doing some of these things, but the IEBC has always, made the country to believe that elections are events and not a process. And that for me is a matter of great concern. Lastly, and as I leave because I hope to get another chance, is the culture that I see out there. The words of violence I see spoken in rallies. I do not see the kind of an electoral environment that engenders respect for rights, that engenders civility. Whenever, politicians open their mouth, the way they call their opponents, in itself, even as the religious representative talks about peace, some of those utterances would cause a riot in a rally, depending on where you make them. If one of the candidates was to go to another stronghold and make certain careless remarks, we have seen how, the potential that some of those remarks make. And so it goes back to the institutions that are charged with managing elections to ensure that gradually we do not see some of those epithets that are being made in rallies that were made in 2017, were made in 2007, were made in 2013, still being made in 2022. And so that for me worries me, even as we hope that the elections will be peaceful. But finally, and as I end this this part of my presentation, is that the IBC, as currently constituted, is yet to inspire public trust and confidence in itself. Remember, the IBC that we have now is the one that presided over the 2017 elections, which didn't end very well. And so that really eroded public trust and confidence. I'm worried that between 2017 and now, the IBC has not done enough to engender and inspire public trust and confidence in itself. We were glad to see 4 new commissioners appointed. Even in a football match, when you acquire new players, you field them. We want to see those 4 new commissioners doing something. Not the same old faces, less inspiring, you know. We want the public to begin to see a new face of IBC. And that new face resides partly in the 4 additional commissioners that were appointed recently. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bwana Churchill. Now, that takes me to you, Janak, in terms of from a media angle. While you speak about some of the concerns, but tell me, I mean, the Kenya Correspondents Association is present all over the country, and you've been central in terms of picking out some of those concerns. But even as you speak, would you be able to address yourself to the issue of communications and what Suba raises in terms of public confidence, and how IBC is able to speak to that from a communications point of view?
Thanks. I think this discussion is important, and if we are talking about communication, let me just pick it from 1 or 2 comments that the commissioner made. Commissioner, I'm sure you are attentive. First, if we were to write a story about your remarks here, there are 2 things that will stick out. One is the fact that you dismissed, the contention by a CSO organization that raised issues yesterday and could not even, get to know or to pronounce their names well. See that, eh? They have legitimate concerns. You may not probably agree with them. Then the second thing is, you have said that there were busybodies that went to court. So we would, the communication would be, I'm sure there are a few of our media colleagues there, the ones who are watching out there. They will say, IBC dismisses Kenyans who went to court as busybodies. How does that inspire confidence in the commission? Or the civil society organizations that are here are part or work together with the ones that you dismissed in your very earlier remarks. I mean, people have varied views about how the commission works. In fact, I think it's important what Suba Churchill has said. We have had about 3 commissioners who have been fairly entrenched, within that commission, and of course, the staff who have been acting. 4 new commissioners have come in. We probably need to see them out here. What are they saying? What is the character? What are their profiles like? A colleague of mine in the media probably soon going to interview all of you and them to find out, I don't know, 3-4 months into the recruitment, what is there? So I'm making a case for very careful communication from the commission, because if it is done carelessly, then for the media, it is the drama you create in that communication that we go out, not what you have enumerated in terms of the milestones you are achieving and the preparations. So that is critical. Now, in terms of certain concerns, so the concern is about communication. And one of the things I would like to tell the IBC is, for example, in terms of even your communication, have you revised your communication strategy? I receive your press releases. It appears to me that the data bank is old. It needs to be revised. And that speaks to the need for you to, possibly understand the changing media environment. I heard you say, for example, that you have met the Kenya Sector Media Working Group, of which we are part as KCA. And of course, these comments are also related to all other players in the electoral environment and those who want to speak to Kenyans. Do you understand the media environment? If you speak to the Kenya Media Sector Working Group, it's composed of the main media players As we speak now, there are over 200 radio stations across the country. How do we reach them? The Kenyans who are unable to go and or do not appreciate the need to register out there, they are not consuming the Nairobi-centric media. So we must be able to deliberately want to reach out to them. What are the structures like? IBC, for example, has been fairly, I think rigid in terms of allowing its officers on the ground to address the media. This has caused a lot of, we have just done 4 major meetings in the rural areas, and you find that journalists are complaining about how your team communicates. Some of them say, no, we are waiting for Nairobi to allow us to speak or ask Nairobi. So I'm proposing that as we go to the elections, the issue of communication to the public must be decentralized. I mean, if there are not major policy issues that, Chebukati's got to address himself to or something, then let the other people talk about that. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is media engagement by all players in the electoral environment must go beyond Nairobi. It must seek. There are over 70 TV stations, many of them digital. How are we reaching them? The other concern, of course, for us as media is the safety and security of journalists. And indeed, I think Mr. Moyo did indicate here, and all of us are concerned, that even as we speak about elections, more than half of the journalists who are currently practicing out here have not covered any elections, so they might just have covered the 2007 elections. And that concern, also, over 500 journalists lost their jobs because of, they say because of COVID. Of course, within the media industry and as an advocacy body, we don't want to agree that it was entirely because of COVID, because even within the media establishments themselves, others are using the excuse of COVID to lay off experienced journalists. So you're going to have, the media desks or election desks that are going to be, handled by inexperienced people and in the field. So those are things that will concern us. I mean, what kind of dialogue are we giving Kenyans when some of the journalists cannot be able to reflect on what happened in 2017 or 2013? And perhaps this gathering needs to know that in 2007, we had over 200 journalists who suffered trauma. And some of them died out of trauma. And indeed, we had what we in the media sector, or at KC, we call internally displaced journalists, who are displaced because of the violence. Some of them don't want to do anything related to elections. And across the hotspots, there are all those concerns. So the collective address of some of the concerns of the, of what is coming, or the concerns around elections is something that we must look at between now and then. Perhaps let me just talk about, so the capacity building of journalists is important. This must be approached by virtually all of us. We have had discussions with the civil society actors here. We had a conference in March, I think the one at Kempisi as well. And even this one, the issue of capacity building for journalists, even to understand the electoral cycle, is important, because some of them don't. We have just been in Nakuru, and some of them don't even have IDs. The journalists who are coming on board from colleges, they even don't want to vote. And we expect them to, And then I think within the media sector, we also have not done a bit of internal soul searching. Even after the elections, we have had it. There are difficulties within the media sector in terms of discussing elections. Because who owns the media? The media is owned by some of the critical players, the interested parties. The media owners are the same politicians. So agreeing to a framework where we analyze the media role in this is difficult, and sometimes we are still called Githeri media because we privilege the Githeri man who was holding some Githeri on the line, as the rest of Kenyans who are concerned about more important issues. So it still bothers us. I mean, so internally we are unable to discuss some of those difficulties. In 2017, for example, a number of Kenyans died. The media are all over, but we are unable to even give reports about who has died, yet we have people on the ground. We are waiting for the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights to give the figures because we are afraid. And what you talked about in terms of the 4G network and so on, in the post-election period, for example, in Turkana, the situation was that even a small sound bite could not be sent to Nairobi. I would probably want to hear from the IBC. In certain areas, how can Kisii or regions like Migori or a few other regions, which traditionally have better communication during elections than it doesn't have? Journalists can't submit things. What is happening? Is it a conspiracy between IBC and CA? There are concerns around this, because if that is not addressed, then that would be difficult. So I know we'll have a lot of more discussions, but at the media level, we are concerned about the responsibility by media players in terms of responding to the environment. I think we are not responding very well, and we must be able to discuss that internally. There are regulatory frameworks and policies within the media sector. The media sometimes allows itself to be captured. For example, right now, we are making noise about the attempt to sneak in, amendments to the Media Act to Parliament without the involvement of stakeholders, and that is because there are certain interests that want to ensure that the media is captured as we go to the elections. And then, of course, political parties and leaders across the country, we have very careless statements, I think, as have been alluded to by others. We have situations where journalists are harassed at rallies, and the security sector sometimes do not respond as fast as possible. So the journalists are intimidated. Perhaps we'll keep giving you very false stories if we are intimidated as the media sector. And as the Kenya Correspondents Association, which is the largest network of journalists across the country, we'll probably instruct the journalists not to cover certain people, especially where we think there is danger. Why would they endanger themselves for people who don't want to take care of the interests of the country?
Thank you, William. Thank you for such a wonderful insights. And of course, we'll have more time to discuss some of the issues you've raised, especially the issue to do with the media ownership in Kenya and how that is likely to influence our media covers elections for the 2022. Lastly, as we conclude, I would like to invite Sheila Masinde, who is the Executive Director for Transparency International, to share with us some of the insights and concerns around elections and the preparedness on the same, and especially things to do with corruption and the recently suspension of, we have not had an attempt to make use of our regulation of money in this election. In some of the thoughts that you might have around that area. Welcome, Sheila.
Thank you very much, Marcus, and good afternoon to everybody. I think from where I sit, I share a number of concerns and views that have been reflected in this panel here, but directly on issues around how we manage corruption in this coming election, because we know in this country from the history of all the elections we've had that is always the start of many of our corruption scandals. If you trace back some of the big corruption scandals that we have seen in this country, you can map them to elections, the electoral process. And currently, our attempts to have campaign financing regulated have come a cropper. You've seen what has happened in Parliament between July and September, to the point where the regulations that had been submitted by IBC were unfortunately rejected by Parliament. They claimed technicalities, where they said that IBC had submitted these regulations late. But really, if you look at our history in terms of trying to regulate campaign financing, it is just about vested interests and the lack